Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. You will hear from industry leaders covering innovative, cutting-edge business, learning, and HR topics that weave current market research and technology into each episode. Our Excellence at Work podcast is hosted by Brandon Hall Group's Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook.
Thank you for tuning in to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast, and don't forget to subscribe. Today, we're going to be talking about building the next generation learning technology ecosystem. And with me, I'd like to warmly welcome John Blackmon, the Chief Technology Officer from ELB Learning. Hi, John. How are you?
Hey, Rachel. Very good. How are you doing?
Very well, and looking forward to our chat today. We're going to be talking about some of your experience. Also, this is a follow-up to a recent webinar that we had that our team collaborated with you on building the next generation of learning technology ecosystem. And so from that episode or that webinar, there was a lot of great questions, and the conversation was quite interesting. So we're going to continue that thought process, and I'm going to pick your brain a little bit here in just a few minutes. I do want to share with our listeners today a little bit about your background. You are the Chief Technology Officer from ELB Learning, which is formerly known as eLearning Brothers. So you're going through, maybe we'll talk a little bit about what kind of the new company or kind of the evolution of your company. And you have an extensive background in technology. You started your career working at IBM, and as well as you were the co-founder and CEO of Tribantis, which is another great company, and spent your entire career in technology, and so as well as learning, and now even more fitting for. I think technology and the learning industry has certainly evolved, and it's quite rapidly changing. And so to be in this space and to be effective in what we're developing, really kind of have to be agile. You have to be innovative. You have to be on the pulse of what businesses needs, what individuals need. So yeah, it's a very interesting time, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so because of, the way the world has changed, employee engagement is really what is most important right now. You have everyone being remote, or not necessarily everyone, but a lot of employees are remote. If they're not always remote, they're remote part of the time. And so bringing that sense of team together now is more important than it's ever been.
Absolutely. And our company, we spend a lot of time on research around team dynamics, around learning, around engagement. And you really can't have one without the other. You look at learning, there's so much to it. You look at talent, you look at hiring great people, developing people, and everything is integrated with each other. And the technology is the enabler, it's the foundation. However, your process and your people are so important. So, it's really as a leader in this space, it's really important to kind of have a really good understanding of all the different dynamics and how they work together, and how through great technology, how you can make this even better. Also wanted to recognize your company for receiving 5 Brandon Hall Group Excellence Awards in 2021. Congratulations there as well.
Thank you. Absolutely.
It's exciting to see the work that you've done and the clients that you worked with, especially during a time where there's been a lot of change over the last couple of years, and just still come out on top of it, and to see the successes, that's remarkable. Why don't you also, I'd love to get your thoughts on around what HCM or business systems do you see are important in integrating the learning technology ecosystem? As I mentioned, we talk a lot about different areas, and how does it work all together cohesively that you feel that are critical?
Well, like we were just referring to, employee engagement. I think that's really the most important part of human capital management right now, is to really bring people into the team, make them feel still part of the team, and that it begins with onboarding, and it continues through career, and then on to career development as well. I mean, we need to find ways to engage our employees better, and so how do you do that? I think you do that through more innovative and engaging technologies, right? So, but this is going to sound weird coming from a CTO, but the technology is just what enables it. And I think you used that word earlier, and I think that's very much the correct word. The technology enables it, but it shouldn't be the forefront part. You're actually trying to make an inclusive, engaging experience utilizing technology, but not technology not being the most important part of that. So just taking things that users are doing outside of learning, outside of their job, and making that how they're learning, that making that part of the learning experience, I think that's what brings it in. So things like gaming, gamifying what you're doing, that becomes a very important part. People are gaming outside of work. They're doing it on their free time. So if you make that part of their learning ecosystem, then suddenly that becomes a way they'll enjoy learning, right? Virtual reality is another great one. If you know if people are beginning to get into virtual reality, they're buying a lot of virtual reality equipment, they're playing games, doing a lot of those things, gamifying, but bring that into the workspace, bring that and make that something that they can use. So the tools that you should be looking at are things that are in the social landscape of today, and bringing those in and making that a way they can learn so they can enjoy learning. I mean, isn't it nice if your employees would enjoy doing what they're doing and feel like they're getting as part of the team by bringing them in using those tools. So those modern tools are a bit different, but they're reflecting what the modern world is around us.
Absolutely. And do you see, what are some of the challenges that you see companies that are facing in trying to maintain all these different technologies? Because there's certainly a lot, and there's a lot of cool technologies. And, we do see, at least, we see a lot in our research. There's some companies that are on the pioneer, that they're the pioneers in the forefront, and they're charging, full fledged with new gamification, and that's not even new anymore, but let's say AI and robotics and stuff like that, the metaverse. And then you see some companies that are still kind of lagging behind. How do we, how do how do we deal with all these challenges and maintaining this innovative world?
Right. Well, and you basically almost mentioned it by asking the question, but the biggest challenge is keeping up to date with the things that you're dealing with, because so much is changing all the time. I mean, I think we talk about things like the metaverse. The metaverse is not actually completely new. The concept has been around for a long time. There have been, in-person kind of things in technology for a long time, but the way to use the metaverse and the idea of an interconnected metaverse, that's where things come in. And so it's keeping up with that technology and then managing that in the flexible workspaces that we have today. As we referred to earlier, you have that in person when you're in the office and out of the office. And how do you're not going to necessarily have the same equipment when you're in one space as versus the other. So how do you actually work with all those things? And then another big part of the struggle is seeing those shifts in the social landscape, the landscape outside of work, things like the metaverse, and seeing how they can apply in. It almost requires someone to have a full-time position in keeping up with that, right? Or at least having a technology consultant that's able to provide you with that kind of, recognizing that shift and where you need to apply that within your learning technology ecosystem, right? So there's so much to keep up with. It can be challenging at times.
Right. And do you think that companies, like, what technologies do you think companies must be um, familiar with, or have, or be able to make it available to their employees? What's a must in today's world?
So really at this point, artificial intelligence in a lot of different forms is very important. And so AI, you can think of, even things like recommendation engines, skills mapping, content discovery, things like that. So that's very important in today's world. So it sounds, artificial intelligence sounds like a lot, but I mean, it can be as simple as, Netflix recommending the next movie on there, that sort of a thing. That is a form of artificial intelligence. So that's very important. Microlearning, super important, right? So we're all on the go. We all have our phones with us at all times, and that's a great way to learn in small bites on small screens, little bits of information, very, very important to recognize that and make sure you're utilizing that. It's not everything. You won't have every piece of it on there, but you need to have that available. Uh, Virtual reality, augmented reality, very key things. It's a huge up and coming thing. It is great for training on things that require spatial awareness. It's also great for things like onboarding when you can, if somebody won't be in the office, you can introduce them to the office. Maybe you introduce them to other offices in the company, other people. They can feel like they're meeting them. That whole thing. So a lot of technologies like that are important to integrate into your current ecosystem. Bring them in as you can and utilize them. You end up with a very diverse ecosystem, and I think that might be the key is a diverse ecosystem so that it's not just one way. We're not just getting on our LMS and going through the same state course every time. Change it up, make it different, keep it diverse, work with a diverse ecosystem.
Right. And as far and in mentioning LMSs, do you see that learning is primarily still accessed through the LMS?
So the LMS is a foundational part of the technology ecosystem, the learning technology ecosystem. It's not going to go away. It's worth if you have things that require compliance, certification, that's where they're going to be based because that's where they've been tracked. It's the base part of the ecosystem. So I think it's always going to have a role, but it's not the only part of that ecosystem. Learning happens in many places, in many ways. You can think of one of the new things is the LXP is the new term that's very popular. It's really you can look at it kind of almost like another layer. That's where you get that the user generated content, usage analytics, a little bit different than the LMS, but really a layer of the LMS, right? So it's a different way to utilize it. So I don't think the LMS is ever really going to go away, and I don't think it should really go away. But it'll just be one part of the arsenal, and maybe it is just a layer of the entire employee experience platform, if you will, which is another new term. Lots of new terms out there. So, but it's a full experience platform, really.
Right. It kind of, if you think about it as a university, we don't ever really see universities going away. However, it's a mechanism to get to your professors, your content, your to be able to interact with other students, so on and so forth. More in a non-technical way. But an LMS is kind of that platform that allows you to have access to the content, to and how you integrate it with the other systems. That's the important part too, and how well your LMS, the capabilities that it does have, the ability to integrate is important.
Right.
What are some of the
I
I was
think I
just
was
going
going
to
to say I
say,
think we're seeing that as the
right?
LMS platforms are growing in that way, and they're making more APIs available for integration, allowing other platforms to put in. We at ELB Learning are doing a lot of that with our own products. We're actually having them map together and allowing one to work with the other. So I mean, we see that as an important part going forward.
Absolutely. And what are some of the other examples or client examples that you find fascinating or unique that you may not have seen in the last couple of years?
Well, some of these are things that have been driven by the pandemic and remote situations, and some are just ones that just made sense. But one that a company that we work with called Intia out of Europe, they were working with a shipping container company, and they were having a problem getting people trained up on inspecting the shipping containers before they go out. You're working, it's in the factory where they're going through and working on these, and they were looking at finding a way to do it. And so because that's a spatial awareness kind of application and truly was always done on site, so you actually had to fly people in from all over the world to train them on shipping container inspection, they actually went for a virtual reality method of training on that. They were looking at a lot of different ways to do it, ended up doing a VR training. And just as they were getting that finished, or actually just before they got it finished, the pandemic hit, and then they were not able to train in any other way. They had to completely replace their training program with a VR inspection program. They actually found out to be better. They actually passed more people and got better results through that training program than they did with their in person one. Didn't have to fly anyone in, didn't have to go. So these are things you find out now. They were forced; they had no choice in the matter. But they found out that it ended up being a better way to train than bringing those people in, because they had such a variety of trainers, because they had this operation going nonstop, and the number of shipping containers went up massively during this. We ship a lot more products now, and so in order to keep up, the only way to keep up was to do it trained through virtual reality. So that was an amazing experience for them. We had a contract with a company, Fendi, also out of Europe. They were having a problem with theft within their stores, shrinkage, as they like to call it, within the stores. And so they were trying to figure out how do they scale out training, because they were in 30 different countries. Their employees spoke 11 different languages, and they needed to roll out training on a variety of subjects, but theft being one of those. And they ended up creating a completely mobile application. But in that mobile application, they used 360 images and video, and you actually use your phone to actually walk around or view around within the space that you're in, and recognize potential thefts and things like that. It's a very interesting use of the technology, and they did have a bit of testing in there, but the testing was just kind of part of the experience. It was kind of a Where's Waldo almost kind of experience, where you go through and you find things within there, such that the employees didn't even know they were being tested, right? So that it was received very well. They got through all the things. They translated into multiple languages, and they rolled it out, and it was all done through employees' phones. And so easier way for people to do it. They could do it at any time when they were out on the floor during a slow time and so forth. So it ended up being a great way to train. So it's finding ways to fit it into your current operation, really.
Mm-hmm. Those are really good examples, and both virtual reality and having also the recognition piece through your mobile app. That it seems very interactive for them. So they're doing something kind of, they're having fun with it, but they're learning as they're going through some
And
of
that's the
this critical
key,
part of
is
their business.
right, allow them to have fun. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's where the next level's got to go. It's got to be technology enabled, but the most
Right.
important part is it's got to be fun, right? That's
It's
the
more
solution as
memorable.
well.
Yeah, it's stickier, it's more memorable. It's the results are better. We see that time and time again through our research. Is when they can apply it. It's interesting. It's relevant, and it's definitely going to have a greater impact. And before we wrap up today, what are some of the things that you suggest learning professionals should change, or that learning technology should change to help improve performance engagement?
Well, I mean, one, going mobile, which is like we just discussed. Recognize that people all are mobile all the time. We're all looking at our phones. We're all doing that. We need to go with that as well. Really, gamification, super important. Gaming is huge outside of the work for people. In the younger workforce that's coming in, games are expected. And so you really need to think about gamification when you're going in everything you do. It doesn't have to be a pure game, but just the reward system, that kind of, there's so many ways you can integrate gamification in what you're doing. Variety of types of content. It's not one thing. It's never just a single solution. Change it up. Keep people interested. Make it different all the time. Make it interesting. Adaptive or personalized learning. Give a person a way to, if they know the answer before they're going to have to go through 20 pages of information, allow them to show that they know the answer, and maybe don't do it just through a pure test question. Give them something they can go through and understand. And then another one is measuring the effectiveness of training. I think that's something that we've all missed out on a lot previously, is that we're not, we've measured the score that somebody got, but how effective was the training? What did we learn? How did our people, when they learned this information, how did they perform afterwards? Finding ways to effectively measure. I think that's a great way to improve, because it helps us improve our process creating it.
I really like the piece too about giving them a little bit of testing in the beginning to kind of help them think about the content or think about the situation. I see this in younger people. I have uh, our daughter's 9, and so I didn't want her brain to turn to mush this summer. So I ordered some books just for her to have like some practice with math and reading, and in these practical books, they have at the very beginning, they just do like a little question or a little exercise just for them to think about what they're learning. And it's very, it's very helpful in getting them thinking about it. And then I think it also, it gives you confidence in what you're starting to tackle rather than going down a road and having to think about it or going through the training and not knowing that you're on the right track. That also can be very demotivating for anyone, whether you're young,
Sure.
old,
Right.
anywhere in between.
Yep.
So I think it's exciting, the ability that you have through technology and through the different tools and platforms to create great interactive, engaging content and experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where we have been going. That has been the shift from eLearning Brothers DLB Learning, is the growth and the shift and the diversity that we have and the ability to tackle it at all different levels now.
hmm Well, John, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It was quite fun, and I appreciate all of your expertise that you share, as well as our audience, and sure that they enjoyed it as well. So thank you, and until we chat again, this has been great. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.